I'd like to welcome everybody to this CIWEM East Midlands branch webinar. We just wait a little while for everyone to come in. We've got quite a lot of people who've registered today, so we'll just give people a chance to actually come in. Here's Andrew.
Hi there.
Hello there.
I was a bit late trying to join, so.
We've got 418 registrations. So they are coming in now. We're live. I will hand it over to you, Andrew.
Perfect. Hi there all. Welcome to the Mansfield Green Recovery talk. So Mansfield, if any of you don't know, is in an area just north of Nottingham. So it's got quite a lot of groundwater issues, surface water issues. So we've got a project there to do quite a lot of interventions, putting lots of systems in. So Angus is going to talk about that in a moment, but yeah, I just wanted to introduce the talk. So just as a matter of housekeeping, so CIWEM, Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Managers. So there's a committee, various people from different companies involved in that. So welcome to join. So we've got quite a few events coming up. There's quite a lot of events coming up in the near future. So we've got events next week, Derby Flood Alleviation. So we've got a joint event with the West Midlands branch looking at Severn Trent. So we've got the Dr. Jenkins competition in June. So that's where kind of new graduates can put in kind of papers and things like that about some projects they're working on. And also Alastair in Derbyshire used to be a golf course, and there's a rewilding program there. So we've got a kind of a talk about that one. The webinar is going to be recorded. So if you've got any technical issues, just dial in the chat feature or comment in there. We'll take questions at the end of the presentation. So if you've got any questions, just use the Q&A facility on Zoom at the end. So this event's going to be an hour of CPD. So so that's pretty much it. I'll hand over to Angus to introduce himself. That's probably the best bet from now.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, everyone. I'm Angus Smith, Technical Lead Project Manager on the Severn Trent Mansfield Flood Resilience Scheme. Between myself and Adam, who I'll let introduce himself now.
Hi, I'm Adam Boucher. I'm the Operations Leader for Severn Trent on Mansfield Green Recovery. So I've been with Severn Trent since 2000 and been a CIWEM member since then as well.
Thank you.
Right. So welcome, as Angus has just said, we're going to give you a bit of introduction. If anybody can't hear or see us, then just let us know in the chat. But effectively what we're going to be trying to do over the next hour is answer your questions with regards to potentially the biggest SuDs project that has ever been attempted, and give you some background as to why it's happening and how we've gone about it so far. We started, both of us, on the 1st of October in 2022, so we're kind of into our stride now. And the project, if you're not aware, is part of the Severn Trent Green Recovery Programme. So where the regulator had asked us to come up with any ideas we wanted to try, anything we wanted to bring forward into this AMP to help with the post-pandemic recovery. And Live Being Live put in our chief exec, if you're not aware of Liv Garfield, put in an extra £565 million bid to be delivered all within this current AMP, which was far bigger than any other submission made by any other water company to the Green Recovery request. So part of that, one of the 6 projects was effectively a trial SuDs project. Basically, we're investing £76 million of Severn Trent customer money into Mansfield on nature-based solutions. with the main aim of protecting communities from flooding. As Andrew said, there are some overland flow residual issues. Mansfield had had a lot of investment through the 90s with regards to basically a combined sewer trunk system, 2.8 metre diameter tunnel, so everything effectively alleviated the majority of the internal flooding problems, but we've got this kind of residual flooding issue on the surface. And we're working alongside Mansfield District Council, who are the lead planning authority, and also the neighbourhood town centre management kind of team, and look after parks as well. And then Nottinghamshire County Council, who are the lead local flood authority and are also the highway authority. The objective of the project is to provide a network equivalent storage of effectively 58 million litres of surface water. So that's 23 Olympic-sized swimming pools in kind of volume, and potentially try and develop the blueprint on how we're going to manage flood risk in the future through these nature-based solutions. And the added bonus is obviously we get to make one of our towns, Mansfield, a fresher and greener place to live for our customers and communities. One of the reasons Mansfield was chosen is combined network. It is got potential for infiltration into ground, and it had this kind of bottom of the bowl overland flow effect as well. And when you add in the current social depravity within the area, it scored the highest out of all the potential catchments. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to bore you with what a SuDs is, because I think you're probably all on that page. So effectively, we're trying to develop 5 standards of different types of interventions, what I call the green to better green solutions. So your bioswale, long linear V shape kind of depression that is alongside a highway. And then a detention basin, which is effectively turning open space with a depression, a bit more Mr. Blobby shape, to help us direct that surface water in, slowing it down, reducing the flow of surface water direct to our combined sewers, and trying to get that back to the ground, obviously, where we can. Then we've got these highway interventions as well, the kind of verge rain gardens or street planters. Exactly the same kind of thing. One's just a build out into the street, one's sits in the verge, depending on services and what's viable from an accommodating those intervention point of view within the built environment. And then what we were really conscious of with regards to Mansfield was, as the council have basically paved over a lot of the verges, they've replaced it with cuttings to enable parking for terrace property and local residents. So very much parking capacity and need is a big subject, and one of the reasons we've got so much creep affecting our sewerage networks. And so having that permeable paving option for us as part of this trial was very important, because we would come up against a lot of opposition if we hadn't got that, if we wanted to just go everything green, because some of the locations just aren't viable. So we're kind of following the hierarchy of, yeah, your big green where you can, and then your smaller green within your highway areas, and then permeable paving. We have got tree pits as well within the scope of works, and also we've got an objective to provide some roof drainage as well through downright planters or blue-green roof. So yeah, typical cross section on a SuDs there on the top right. Where we're effectively got the different layers from the growing medium, the filter layer, storage layer, and Angus will come on to some detail around what we're trying there in the outlets in a short while. Next slide, please. So obviously wide range of benefits with SuDs. Again, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs here, because a lot of you will be aware of those benefits of SuDs. I think there's a few to focus on for us. Although Mansfield is predominantly about reducing flood risk, we are anticipating large reduction in frequency and magnitude of storm overflow activations, and that is one of the considerations around how we're targeting different drainage areas and subcatchments to actually give us that additional benefit. So that's going to be a massive additional benefit to this project, and something that the DWMP team are focusing on, and we're focusing on with our pre and post intervention monitoring as well, to understand what impact we are having in that arena. I think, fantastic that SuDs really help us to rewind the clock on the impact of not only climate change and the greater intensity storm events, but also the way that society, not only the local authorities, I'll show you some examples in a bit, have paved over every verge going and put parking in, but also the way that obviously we've paved over our front gardens as residents as well. And that is something that is very much in the focus in Mansfield, where we've got that direct runoff from hard standing, where once there was a front garden and natural turf. So yeah, we do anticipate some energy and carbon reduction out of Mansfield as well, because the trunk sewer goes into the sewage treatment works, into a terminal pump station, a 3 screw pump lift, 1600 litres a second in storm. So hopefully we will reduce some of that by actually being able to infiltrate in some of the areas. I think on the second one, the socioeconomic stuff, we've spoke a bit about reducing flood risk, but what we are noticing is how it enables us to really create local partnership opportunity that possibly would have been missed as a result of not being able to be quick and nimble on working together. We've already got 2 or 3 examples with Mansfield District Council, the EA, of actually coming together and putting some funding together a lot quicker than we would traditionally, and being able to do that at pace as well. And I think the other is just the application, really. We're definitely seeing some real wide-ranging scalability benefit, from large detention basins through to small interventions in highway. And potentially some of those could be really fast and nimble as well, and less disruptive than traditional grey solutions. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so we've created these kind of standards, and Angus is going to take us through those.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so I'm just going to give a quick whiz through some of the technical aspects of trying to deliver SuDs on this sort of scale. So we realised quite quickly and early on in the project, when we were trying to deliver 58,000 cube and thousands of interventions across Mansfield over the next, what is now 2 years, we couldn't kind of individually bespoke design each intervention, because we just don't have the time or even funding to do so. So we had to develop some SuDs kind of standard templates that we could use and kind of drag and drop, almost cookie cutter like, across Mansfield. It's the first time that volume's really been the primary driver for a SuDs project at this scale. So we needed to adapt existing kind of industry standards to suit volume as the target. We didn't have any existing SuDs standards as a Severn Trent. We just referred to the SuDs manual, the Serious SuDs manual, which in itself is reasonably conservative on some of the aspects that allow you to kind of store and create volume within the interventions, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So yeah, we worked with our design and construction partners and other industry experts to develop what are our Mansfield SuDs templates, to enable that factory style approach and maximise the volume we can get out of each intervention. And these Mansfield templates have then been tweaked a little bit and probably toned down a little bit to form what are now the Severn Trent SuDs manual standards, and they can be used across Severn Trent now on our core project as well, going through into AMP8. So the second bit we realised we needed to sort out pretty early on was how we actually measure benefit. You can't just kind of put some paving in and expect it to give you the maximum volume. So we assessed the Brava model to identify what was the critical storm for Mansfield, and what would give us the most benefit, kind of what our design storm needed to be, and a bit of a balance between the smaller kind of individual highway interventions and those larger detention basin interventions that Adam talked about. Yeah, that turned out to be the 1 in 10 year 4-hour storm, which gave a 35 mil effective rainfall depth across the catchment. So we could then use that to develop a bit of a simple calculation tool as to how we're going to calculate the benefit from each of our interventions. And the graph that's on the screen shows that dotted line across the middle is the 35 millimetre rainfall line. So although it kind of intersects with our 4-hour 1 in 10 year storm, it delivers volumetric benefit for a lot of other higher return period storms. So your 1 in 20s, your 1 in 30 storms are also shorter durations are also covered, which is really important. Kind of Severn Trent typically work to that 1 in 20 and 1 in 30 year for internal and external sewer flooding. So having determined that 35 mil rainfall depth, we've created a simple calculation tool, kind of a spreadsheet based tool that you can input a few parameters about the intervention in the catchment area, and using various material properties and parameters, then it gives you a rough and ready number of what volume you can claim from that and what volumetric benefit you get in that design storm. And it's used throughout the design process, so right from initial concept to prove, is this site actually worth putting an intervention on, through to detailed design, and then post-construction, the as-built actually confirming, yeah, this is how much volume we've got from it. Because we don't have the time to kind of individually model each intervention and create a micro drainage model and do what we would do if we had kind of 10 or 20 years to deliver the project. We probably could do that, but at this sort of scale and pace, we've got to go pretty quickly. But it's not to say we're not doing any hydraulic modelling. There is kind of a post-construction hydraulic model assurance and build that we're doing, which will stretch into AMP8 and post-project to kind of prove this is how many meters cubed we think we've taken out of the storm network in our design storm, and then compare that with the model, because ultimately going forwards then to prove flooding benefits, then we'll need to use the model to confirm that sort of thing. And all of this learning from Mansfield is also feeding into PR24, the plans for AMP8 and future versions of Mansfield, and kind of tweaking business cases and stuff like that. So we then need to develop a bit of a process. So how do you get from every street in Mansfield and every park in Mansfield to actually having some interventions and building them? So we've kind of got this 5-stage process of, you start off with a load of desktop data and sitting behind a computer screen, kind of looking at different data sets to figure out, going from the 100% of areas down to probably 5% of areas that might potentially be viable. You then do outline design, you go and walk the streets, you actually have a look and see whether the desktop data is completely accurate, or if it says the highway's falling one way and it's actually going the other, and that again rules out a few more locations and potential interventions. You go through detailed design, doing some SI, some topo and infiltration testing to confirm whether we can infiltrate or not, and then obviously go and build it, and then hand over back to Severn Trent or the local authority, depending on what the intervention type is, and close out and get it on all of our asset database and the monitoring of those interventions going forwards. And you can see between outline design and detailed design, and then detailed design and construction, there is some interaction with the highway authority. So Nottinghamshire County Council have employed VIA as their kind of highway consultants. So there's various reviews with them, and then a sign off before we can go to construction to make sure that they're happy with what we're building in the highway, and that it meets their standards and what they'd expect to see from kind of a SuDs intervention in the highway. So we then move on to kind of how are we actually identifying where to put interventions. So we've developed a 2D mesh for the whole of Mansfield. This slide shows 2 examples of the 2 of the catchments that we're working in, but this is to really try and target the interventions in locations that will give us significant flooding and also a CSO activation reduction benefits. So from the M10 240 storm, there's currently about 125,000 meters cubed of flooding from about 12,000 manholes, and circa 105,000 meters cubed of sewer overflow spills into the River Morne and Meaden. So we're trying to target areas that will give us the most benefit and reduce that volume as much as possible. So this is being used by the desktop site selection teams and the outline design teams across Mansfield to kind of try and prioritise these locations for the interventions. Alongside that, we've also developed a digital tool to try and do some of that, kind of automate some of that desktop site selection. So it uses parameters such as highway widths and kind of allowable remaining highway widths when you put an intervention in, looking at existing parking areas that we could pave over and whether any flow would actually fall to it, because there's not much point putting some permeable paving on top of a hill. So that looks at the whole of Mansfield, all of our study area, has chunked up all of the highway into 1 metre segments, and then kind of analysed it with a set of rules that we've developed through the learning we've got through so far on the project, and placed interventions which we can then take through into outline design and do some of that cutting to get to the final intervention mix. Within this, we've accounted for constraints like utilities and customer driveways and things like that with the various factors and the rules that I've put in. And so for all of the highways across Mansfield, then it's given an available meters cubed value of just under 34,000 meters cubed. So this is just looking at highways, so it doesn't account for things like the bigger detention basins and the private stuff we're doing and things like kind of like school sites. So we know that we can get an amount from highways, and then we've got to top it up with those basins and other parts of other strategies, sorry, of the project. So from that site selection tool, it then enables us to do a bit of strategizing across Mansfield and tweaking the intervention mix we want to try and hit depending on costs or kind of the stakeholder feedback. They might not want as much street rain gardens or paving in their area, and we kind of tweak those. So we've modelled over 110 different scenarios around Mansfield of how we can deliver the project and what can stack up to our 58,000 metres cubed. And obviously all have their benefits and drawbacks. So it's been quite a task to narrow those down and select the way forwards to enable us to deliver over the next 2 years. And this is just an example of the output. So the top left is how we've chunked Mansfield up into lots of different drainage areas. And then the tool as output, kind of what the total potential is for different intervention types in those areas. And that then allows you to go and focus. And on a desktop point of view, say we could put a rain garden there and actually go and kind of ground truth it and say, yeah, this rain garden fits there, it needs to be tweaked and have a path going through the middle or made a bit bigger or smaller. And then we take it through design. So on to a few of the challenges that we've faced so far. These are kind of all the parameters from these kind of feed into that simple calculation tool. One of the main bits is around outflow controls. Existing products don't really allow you to maximise volume, and the Serious SuDs manual recommends kind of a minimum 20 mil orifice size, which during a 4-hour storm, you can lose circa 8 to 10 cube through it, depending on the depth of the intervention, which is a significant amount of volume, which we then can't claim towards the project, but are also releasing back into the sewer network during the storm. So we've looked at 50 and even 10 millimetre orifices and developed a bespoke product with a manufacturer that enables us to use and maintain a 10 mil orifice without any risk of it blocking. And that means that there's a 75% reduction in what actually ends up going back to the sewer during the storm, and means that we're keeping more flow out of that network where we do need to go back to the sewer. The second bits are our material properties. So we're using lots of different materials and different storage layers and growing mediums, but there's limited existing information on the exact kind of porosities and hydraulic conductivities of those. And because of the sensitivity of the calculations to those numbers, we need to know kind of the exact values. So we've done a lot of testing with the University of Sheffield to determine these parameters, and that's fed into our simple calculation tool. And then we're also trialling alternative materials. So for the storage layer that you can see over on the right hand side of the screen, in traditional SuDs, that's an aggregate based kind of a coarse open graded aggregate of circa 30 to 35% porosity. There's options for either using kind of recycled plastic crates or what's called hydro rock, and that gets you up to more than 90, 95, 98% porosity. So for the same excavation area, you can get significantly more water stored within it, and you don't need to dig as deep or as wide. So we're trialing some of those on this project as well. Permeable paving ratios. So this is around how much catchment area you can drain to an area of permeable paving, and current industry guidance is very limiting on this. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so essentially for every metre squared of permeable paving you can drain 2 metres squared of impermeable area to it, but that doesn't really allow us to maximise the area and the volume created by that permeable paving. So we're pushing the boundaries on that and doing a lot of investigation and testing, which will hopefully inform future updates to the Serious SuDs manual, which is ongoing at the moment, and kind of push that guidance to really make SuDs work for water companies, because obviously volume is one of the primary benefits to the water company. And we've had a lot of industry expertise and advice and input kind of on the parameters that we're looking to push, because we're not just kind of going for it and hoping. There's a lot of expertise and knowledge being input into the project to guide and steer us in the right direction. And then the last bit on here is around infiltration. So obviously we want to infiltrate where we can. It's the best option. It doesn't only take the water out of the sewer network temporarily, it keeps it out permanently, and also has wider benefits such as recharging groundwater storage and the aquifers. It's not possible in some locations, either proximity to properties. So if you're within 5 metres, then it's in contravention of building regs. And also there's some locations around Mansfield where there's unlicensed and unrecorded tips and older contaminated land from previous land uses. So the picture in the middle of the screen is where, according to our records, it was a nice greenfield site, and we went and did some site investigation and found a load of older contaminated land and material from an old tip. So we can't infiltrate through that because it risks washing contaminants down into groundwater and the aquifers. But the difficulty is how you account for this in early design, because without going and doing some site investigation on every single site, you don't know what's beneath ground despite all the records we have. So we're doing some hydrogeological risk assessments across Mansfield to identify as much as we can and kind of make a bit of a generic plan of where's going to be good for infiltration across Mansfield and where isn't. So some of the other constraints and design considerations that we're facing into. So hydrogeology, following on from what I was just saying, Mansfield is almost split north to south by two different underlying geology types. On the east side is more of a sandstone, so it's very good for infiltration. On the west side is more clay limestone. So it's not as good, but it still has pockets where it is good for infiltration. So that's all feeding into those hydrogeological risk assessments for the whole of Mansfield, which will then guide intervention locations going forwards. The tree protection, so obviously we don't want to be cutting down trees just to put interventions in. It's not really the ethos of a greening project. So we need to stay outside of existing tree canopies where possible. It might be that there's some smaller trees that have been recently planted, which we can replant within our interventions, which is okay, but there's a lot of older, more mature trees around Mansfield that we're avoiding more. The highways design standards, so as I mentioned, we're heavily involved with Nottinghamshire County Council as the highway authority and their consultants via and in their guidance and kind of what they'll allow us to put in the highway. So there's quite strict rules on what you can put where and the remaining road widths and that kind of thing. So we developed a bit of a highways design manual for SuDs that they're all signed up to, and that just enables our designers to quickly go through and they know exactly what criteria they've got to meet for that given road width and given road type, without having to do that bespoke design for each and every intervention. And similarly with utilities, we know that retrofit SuDs is difficult because there might be what looks like a nice clean bit of highway and no scars in it, but every other utility wanted to put their gas main or high voltage cable there because it's clear of other services. So we're working around services and it developed a bit of a matrix for what kinds of utilities we can incorporate into the intervention and what we just need to avoid. So your cast iron gas mains and water mains and that we're steering clear of because there's too much risk of those. But yeah, smaller street lighting cables and lower pressure gas mains and that we can incorporate and protect within the interventions. And we worked through this with all the different utility providers to get them on board with what we're doing in Mansfield. So I'll hand back to Adam now.
Thank you, Angus. That was really insightful, hopefully, for everybody. And yeah, there's just one or two questions already picking up on the Q&A I've seen. So hopefully we'll cover one or two of those off in the next few slides. And then the ones we haven't, we'll pick up and answer in the forum at the end. So just on the ownership piece, just to be clear, as a trial for Mansfield, Severn Trent are being allowed to capitalise effectively the green assets, the verge rain gardens, the street planters, the bioswales, any basins and any tree pits. So we are being allowed to capitalise them, but it's only under the trial. So effectively, it's been quite an easy discussion with local authorities. They certainly sat there with their arms crossed at the beginning and said who's going to look after all this, and we said we are. They are going to be built under Section 114, the Water Industry Act, which allows water companies to intercept others' water, or the surface water entering the public sewage system, and they will be constructed as drainage systems unless they are a sewer. And we are therefore directly funding that maintenance, because as we can capitalise them, we can add them to our asset base and therefore add them to future AMPs for maintenance cost. But that is only under this trial. So it will be interesting, I think, how the regulator sees this working. And obviously the trial and the output of the trial is going to be really fundamental to see, can we do this at pace? And therefore, is this the way of unlocking the future maintenance on operability of SuDs within the network to help us relieve sewage networks? So the only thing the regulator was very clear on is that any permeable paving could not be a Severn Trent asset, and neither could any private roof water downpipe planters above ground or blue-green roof. So they will remain, and it's logical, they will remain in the ownership of either the private landowner, and we have had some already. We've constructed a few within Mansfield District Council areas where they've got tenant properties and they've got effectively communal car parking. We've done a couple already in those areas, so they will transfer to Mansfield District Council. And where we've done them in cuttings or provided parking bays on very wide roads, formal parking bays now with permeable paving in, the local authority, highway authority, will pick up the maintenance of that element. So they will not be maintained by Severn Trent, and they will remain, they are effectively being financed by operations cash. Same with the any roof water drainage, which again, if it's sat on your roof or attached to your building, it seems logical that you look after that as a landowner. And I'll come on to, there is potentially for us to incentivize non-household properties to accept permeable paving and downpipe planters or blue-green roofs in exchange for a reduction in their current surface water charge. This is in the non-household area where they currently get charged per metre squared area within a banding system. So that is something that Mansfield will also trial. Next slide, please, Angus. It's obviously very important that we get the stakeholder management right. So we spoke a little bit about landowners and kind of local authorities, but I think from a public point of view, the biggest element that we've got to get right is our kind of consult and inform. And one of the probably the biggest areas around the success of Mansfield is the why. Why are we doing this, and what are we trying to learn? And as well as the what's going to happen, when's it going to happen, how's it going to affect me? So we're trying to do that again through our comms teams, through our website. We're doing traditional letter drops, traditional community centre meetings, but we've also got a virtual room, and we can send that link round through Andrew and Barbara after, so you can have a little look. And you'll see very much the tone is around the why as much as the what's happening and when. Also, we're looking to build community relations with schools, community groups. We've got community centres interested in having interventions on their spare land already, and we're doing a trial on one of those. And also we've reached out to all the schools, done and offered them assemblies on the why on the project, sort of taken that up. And we're obviously looking at schools as the 34 schools that we've got within the catchment to try and convince them to have some SuDs on their property as part of the project deliverables. Next slide, please. And there was a question I saw Mr. Schaefer had put on there about learning. There is definitely a learning opportunity. We have an obligation to share what we're learning with regards to Mansfield with the industry and other water companies. So that's, again, very much very clear within the final determination. And so, yes, we are determined not only through the likes of CIWEM and Sirius, Australia, but also make sure that we get the right technical papers out. And we've partnered with Sheffield University on PhD, and also some of the detail that Angus went through on kind of the growing medium hydraulic conductivity, porosity, and the testing that we've also done so far to date. And it's going to be vital that we are sharing those papers appropriately. I think one of my frustrations coming into the project is that I don't think there's been enough shared around the industry on what people have actually done from SuDs. I think there's lots of, I open the magazine up and regularly see, yeah, this is happening down in such and such, but the technical standards and some of the pushing, some helping develop some of the Syria guidance to the next stage is certainly an opportunity that we must take off the back of Mansfield and share with the industry. So I just wanted to make that point. Next slide, please. Really, finally, I just wanted to touch on what's happening out in the field at the moment, and a bit of a prelude to hopefully some of you coming up and seeing for yourself what's going off in Mansfield. So the ambition really was to, I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but when we first got this project, we went up to Sheffield to see the Great Green project in Sheffield. which was very much a transformational project around an area between the railway station and the city centre that was on the edge of the ring road, that was top left corner. You can see there, very kind of 70s ring road layout, which is almost identical but on a smaller scale to Mansfield, and where car was king. And what they've managed to do up there with a scheme over 3 phases now. The first 2 phases were about £8 million, was to get some verge rain gardens in on quite wide streets and reduce that existing road down to a minimum 2-way traffic, take all the white lining out. You can see on the bottom left photos here how they've done that. And by providing, excellent verge rain gardens within the middle section, and then providing a pedestrian and cycle lane to the outside, effectively making car not king. We actually took some Nottinghamshire County Council highway officers and some Mansfield District Council planning officers up to Sheffield and showed them what had actually been done here, and they've got no curbs and no white lining, and there was definitely some concern around, we can't have this in Nottinghamshire. We'll have cars, in the verge rain gardens, and we'll have cyclists just driving off the edge of curbs into verge rain gardens. And we took Sheffield City Council out with us. We paid for them to attend the visit and show us around. And effectively, they allayed some of those fears by saying we've had no accidents. And actually, when you look at the traffic now, as you come off the main ring road in Sheffield into these areas, they just went, look at the speed, and they were literally, cars are crawling doing 22 miles an hour in this area. So that was kind of one of the ambitions we wanted to take into Mansfield, to create that kind of environment. Next slide, please, Angus. So in Mansfield, the town centre, actually, the project coincided with a couple of things. Mansfield District Council had got some ambition themselves and a little bit of funding. And really, they were also going through their consultation on their revised master plan, which was based on kind of connecting people and kind of placemaking. So we kind of plugged this managing kind of flood risk in the middle of that and said, actually, I think we're aligning here. So we had a bit of a great ambition for this Quaker Way that runs around the outside of the pedestrianised kind of town centre and marketplace. Is kind of like an inner ring road, similar to the one that's sure in Sheffield. It's like dual carriageway racetrack. It's a very big, wide barrier that keeps pedestrians and cars very separated at the moment. And it is a bit of a barrier for people getting into the town centre. So it's something that Mansfield are looking at as part of their master plan ambition. And we kind of said, is there an area that we kind of thought there's lots of opportunity here? And our original kind of ambition was to do probably 10% of the funding and within the town centre and the volume because of the flood risk that was existing within there. We said, is there an area that we can get on with independently to your master plan? Because obviously that's tied up with traffic regulation orders and revised highway layouts, etc. And if you move on to the next slide, Angus, please. The area around the town hall was kind of the area that we were given and said, well, they actually said, we're going to do something with the car park, which at top right hand side, you can just see the car park there is 600 square meters. It was actually the old indoor market. It was then knocked down, car park put in place. And you can just see that old loading bay there with the dock blocks for the old indoor market on the outside in the highway. So we kind of looked at what they were planning to do, which was effectively a cascading turfed seating area. And that's all they were looking to do. And we said, well, we think we could feed in quite a bit of surface water in here. Would you be happy for 2 of these bays within your area to actually become verge rain gardens? And are you doing anything with the entrance? And they went, no. And we went, well, if there's no services in there, we think we can get quite a lot of surface water to that area and make that a verge rain garden as well. and effectively make that a border to your site. And actually what we managed to do was, behind the taxi to the right is actually the brand new bus station. And we've got a huge site there that we've got about 1,500 square meters now of surface water that's landing in this highway area surrounding this site, and from the bus station roof and some of the hard standing there, to actually, which comes off its own surface water system and then drops straight into our combined sewer outside this this area. So we've diverted that, and now we're feeding all that surface water directly into this new installation. You can see some of the verge rain gardens under construction, and then BBC East Midlands today have been out, and this is approaching completion now. So by the time you guys come out, hopefully in the not too distant future, you'll see something similar to the artist impression, rather than what you're seeing on the photos there. Flick on to the next slide, please, Angus. And then at the front of the town hall area, we've got to the side, we've got this area called Courthouse. So it's the old courthouse. It's now Witherspoons, because all buildings like this are Witherspoons, aren't they? So the town hall at the side of it, and again, we've fed surface water in as it comes down the hill from the site at the rear. You can see large excavation, large geocellular storage, as Angus said, gives us high void ratio here. Also, because we're not putting vehicular loading on these locations, that gives you that opportunity to use that instead of granular. And then what sits on top is, effectively a big gully. You're feeding that water in. You can see the inlets on the new seating arrangements are actually inlets into these areas, and that's now been planted. So we've got a couple of verge rain gardens here that are similar to the artist's impression on the centre, and they'll take over the next 18 months now. Next slide, please. It's a bit different in the urban areas. So we've trialled an area called Ravensdale, the first of those drainage catchments that Angus showed you. And again, you can see some of the impact of society. And we actually walked around one of the drainage areas. We're on the local councillors, and it was a very similar scene to the top left corner. She was incredibly proud that she'd used her councillor funding to tarmac over all the verges that had become unsightly because people that didn't have drives were now parking on them. And she asked me whether we're not going to be digging her tarmac up, are we? And I said, yes, we are, where we can. But we're going to be obviously mindful of the capacity and need of parking as well, and we'll do pinball paving. And she was absolutely mortified that her nice tarmac is coming up, and saw nothing wrong at all in what she instructed the local authority to do by tarmacking over those verges in the first place. So I think this gives you an insight into some of the battles that we've got as an industry going forward. But you can see in Mansfield, there's just endless examples of verges being taken out. You can see that middle top one, they've paved over, what was a verge with block paving there, just to cut down on maintenance. The shops to the right, when you look back at the 50s, 60s plans, this was the entire green area in front of the shops with walkway through it. And over the years, local authorities just paved over it. And then even the trees that were in there at one point have been tarmacked over. So, we're trying to do now, we're just in the process. This one's actually under construction. We're just digging down to storage layer at the moment. You can see the artist's impression of the two verge rain gardens that we're putting in there that are going to provide about 80 meters cubed of storage from runoff and surrounding contributing area. So that one's under construction. And then on the bottom central one, you can see this is just outside of school, where the road is kind of wide enough for 3 lanes, and we've got parking bays, which are formal bays now for the school run traffic. And these are really great opportunities where you get long linear walls with no drives. The properties are actually served by a service road behind it, and this is where you can effectively work in isolation and get some stuff in without disturbance, because effectively it's a free hit. You're not disturbing anybody. But we have, this does go up and around the corner, and we've had it across drives as well. So next slide, please. you can see on this photo, the granular storage layer bays going in, the check dams, because we've got a gradient there, so you're looking to utilize that. And then you can see some of the paving down. These are some of the parking areas that we spoke about on the top right hand, which are Mansfield District Council tenancy kind of parking, communal parking areas. And these are really good opportunities for us and really cost effective, because you're doing a larger area compared to the road ones, where you might have check dams, or you're obviously interfacing with the traffic, so you've got much more traffic management. And you can see there the granular layer, and then this binding layer that's been laid on the bottom right hand photo before the blocking starts as well, this permeable binding layer. And then just really to finish off, give you an insight into some of the early learning around the basins, and what we find as we come out of the catchment from where those properties were that you saw in the Ravensdale example, which are kind of 40s, 50s, semi-detached, combined, wholly combined. As you get up the hill and you get into sort of the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties properties, you've got a separate system following building control legislation. Up until obviously Flood and Water Management Act 2010, though, all you've got is a trunk sewer running through these areas that was built in the 40s, 50s. And we've got one here that is kind of like 1200 diameter. It was driven in heading, as I say, 40s, 50s, and effectively everything that has been dropped into it. So you've got these little opportunities of separate areas that are infill development that you can potentially pick off with not too much accommodation works. And if they are in a location like this one, which is close to Racecourse Park, where you can create those green to better green solutions through detention basins and get 400, 500, 600 cube of surface water into the ground. This one is potentially good for infiltration as well. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of an early insight as to what we're up to. Covered off a few of the questions, Andrew, but there was a few others that I noticed on there that we haven't touched on, so maybe we should pick up on those now. You want me to carry on through them? Yeah, I'll just pick up on
the questions.
Yeah,
so.
I'll pick up on a few if I start, and then Angus chips in. So anonymous, fantastic level of ambition to retrofit SuDs. How has this influenced local authorities in terms of their approaches to secure good SuDs for new developments? Good question. So I would say at the moment that we've had some good support from Mansfield District Council. They realised the opportunity to off the back of this trial, because obviously we're trying to do this by the end of this AMP. So March 2025, that's the opportunity that exists. We have they have a development where they've knocked down some properties, terrace properties, and they're building 77 new homes. And really what that's given us is a brownfield site with an opportunity for us to do effectively our Schedule 3 standard. What is that going to look like? So I'm very much of the opinion that we should be putting our standard SuDs in to what you've seen today as the first line of defence, with all surface water going into them. And Mansfield are very open to that. And what that's allowed them to do, based on our fit for this project, the 35 mil, effectively they were going to have to put about 500 cube of flood water management storage on that site. Effectively, the first pass of surface water will try and go through the SuDs with the restrictions that Angus has spoke about with regards to the small diameter orifices. So they have that ability. They can't infiltrate on the site. They have that ability, if we were to apply normal rules, to reduce that runoff to about 12.5 litres a second and discharge direct to the sewer. The fact that we've now got that going through SuDs in their design is that we will capture the majority of those spills and that water to that 10 year 4-hour event through the SuDs, and not present that 12.5 litres a second direct to the sewer immediately. So that's really a good thing. And then what my ambition is, then they're still going to have to build their 100-year storage on the site, but that will be through an exceedance route direct to that reduced storage of about 250 cube that they're going to be producing. And we are effectively going to be providing top-up funding through that opportunity. So that's going to be a bit of an example of what we should be doing. They have also done a supplementary planning document, which if you go on their website, you'll see. They haven't gone as far as making that mandatory for the period of the project, which is a slight disappointment and a missed opportunity, I think, because they are worried that they will scare off developers. So I think for me, yeah, they've been really good. They are up for pushing SuDs. We're working closely with the local flood authority, Nottinghamshire County Council, who are making people aware of it. If it's a brownfield site, it's already existing and discharging to our network, then the sites come under qualification. But if it's a greenfield site, it doesn't come under qualification for the project. And effectively, we're just into greenfield runoff, normal hierarchy control. So at the moment, that's where we are. But I want Mansfield to be able to give Severn Trent, this is what our Schedule 3 example looks like. We haven't decided on our policy on that yet. So watch this space, but encouraging signs, I'd say. Hopefully that answers that one. Next one, anonymous again. With the standardised approach to SuDs, does this help quantify the benefit of SuDs interventions in terms of hydraulics, carbon and other multiple benefits in line with Syria's best approach? So Mansfield project is not being measured in line with Syria's best approach. The regulatory output is volume only. We do have some implicit promises within the final determination that we could capture in addition along the similar lines to Syria's best approach. That's the position on the scheme. Do you want to add anything to that, Angus?
No, I think I said
Carbon's a difficult subject, isn't it, shall we say?
yes, yeah, we're working with internal Severn Trent expertise and industry expertise on the carbon side, because carbon impact and kind of sequestered carbon and all that to do with SuDs is quite a evolving topic. So we're hoping to feed into that, but it's not as Adam said, it's not a primary driver for the project. But we are trying to develop kind of the industry guidance and kind of work with other industry partners on how you measure carbon and how you assess carbon impact from SuDs.
Yeah, lovely. So next one, anonymous again. Can you elaborate on how you've worked alongside Mansfield District Council and how you've approached joint funding? So very much it's about, we've definitely done some proactive comms and targeted key leadership, community leadership. The mayor is very supportive and the planning authority on board. So that's been, from the top down, every officer is aware of the project who is leading in either neighbourhood planning, community, or of those kind of subjects, or neighbourhood, parks, departments, etc. So they're helping us with opportunities there. They're looking to make contributions where they can. And I think the big one for me is their greening scheme on that car park. We've ended up putting in the rain gardens. We've paid effectively for the drainage works associated with those rain gardens. They've still paid for their works that they were going to do, i.e. they were digging the tarmac up anyway. They were going to put a turfing system down, so we've paid for the drainage, the growing medium and the planting. So yeah, that scheme would not have provided that level of storage if we hadn't got this project, because it would have just passed us by. We'd have missed that opportunity. So I think there is learning there on how can these green schemes be partnered up quickly, and if we are going to reduce storm overflow activations, how can we get dual benefit out of these kind of projects that local authorities are doing really, really quickly. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that, or if I've covered that question off enough, but that's where we are. That's kind of where we are with MDC at the moment. And they're being very supportive. We're actually sat in their building as the project team, so they've got some spare space following COVID within their office. So we're actually sat in the Civic Centre as a collaborative team alongside our consultants, Arup and ACOM, and alongside our contractors, Galliford Try, Kia, Ground Control, and CPC. So it's very much a collaborative plan, and that's really helpful because when their land team or their planning team want to come and talk to us, they just nip up a flight of stairs and we're there for them. Alex back, good question. Do you find it tricky to persuade Notts County Highways to adopt highways SuDs as part of the project? So, as I alluded to in the presentation, Alex, we are only passing on to them the permeable paving element, already roof drainage on their properties in the future. So it's been a lot harder than it would have been if we were trying to do what companies traditionally do, which is contribute to SuDs, maybe build them and then get somebody else to look after them. I think this is what this trial can offer that's different. Certainly Mansfield District Council were extremely against having anything to do from our handover point of view at the start of the project, and they are, quite worried about some of the interventions we're putting in the places that we're putting them in. There is a lot of councillors out there that are going, they're going to get vandalised, you're going to be going back. Are you sure you're going back? My own chief exec was challenged in our workshop with the councillors several times around, looking after these things. And she was very forceful and said, we will be looking after them for life. And I think this is the change that this trial gives us the opportunity to actually do it, because somebody is going to be committed to looking after it and funded to look after it. So no, it wasn't that hard, but the permeable paving element has been a little bit more of a struggle. I mean, Angus, you touched on that, but I think you've allayed their fears, haven't you, with the work that you've done with the industry experts and taking them to sites. Is there anything particular we want to touch on there?
And I was just going to add, so Jim Marshall further down asked a question about issues with paving and loading, and will they require more maintenance or have issues with heavier vehicles? So yes, this is all, they were all Nottinghamshire County Council's concerns as well. So like Adam said, we've taken them around a load of other permeable paving sites that have been in from anywhere between 6 months and 10 years, and also shown them kind of how we're designing to meet strict loading classes that will allow for waste collection units and HGVs to overrun without causing any other detrimental issues that it wouldn't cause with tarmac anyway. So yes, we've been on a journey with Nottinghamshire County Council and Via to kind of take them through why we're confident in it and why there's existing examples that also work. And so we're definitely getting there with that side of it. And yeah, there aren't any other concerns around the loading aspects now.
Excellent. Paul's replied on the recognising the scale and pace of retrofitting required to help manage CSOs in line with government aspirations. Is there any initial learning on strategic process that can be shared? So, yeah, he's then gone on to say, thanks, Adam. Definitely agree with the need to share more. My greatest concern is around the need for time in terms, skills and developing partnerships. So, yeah, I think, we've spoke a little bit about some of the technical learning. I think, that detention basin example is an easy, quick win. Every water company will have infill development like that next to land that's local authority, and we can use our powers under 114A to go and tap that off as a drainage system if we're funded to do so, or if that becomes part of our DWMP plan with regards to reducing spill. I think we've got to be careful how we go about it. Are we going to hit it hard and quick and not necessarily go to the nth degree from a modelling point of view? We've done a very quick and dirty crude assessment on contributing areas because we know it's a surface water outfall that's going to our sewer already. Contributing area, check it's got no miscons on it, cut it off and take it to a basin. That really can be done at pace. And I think that's one of the learnings. Do we do it at pace as an industry, or are we going to tie ourselves up in knots and try and justify the benefit to release the funding before we do it? So we'll end up with a 2-3 year modelling exercise rather than actually let's just go out and do that one. As long as we're not altering flood route or putting anybody at risk, then really what damage can we do? So I think that's one of the other questions that's probably around that learning. I think some of the other learning, Paul, small interventions are really costly. I think is and hard to achieve. You know, you're kind of getting below 5 cube interventions in highways. Are they really worth doing? And the other area for us really on the CSO element is the non-household. We've got some, you know, we're looking at the top 500 sized non-household sites within Mansfield and trying to understand, are we better targeting those? The hospital area, for example, has got 120,000 square metre site. So that's you know, you put 35 mil on that site, that's a lot of water. You know, you could end up, if you get a third of that site off, you could end up with 1,200 cube being retained in that top of the hill, right at the top of one of our main flood risk zones. So, and they've got a little bit more land and opportunity and car parking to go at. So I think the non-household opportunity is definitely something that over the next 12 months is our next focus. We've just really started to kick off that element of the project. Hannah, it's a blast from the past. Nice to hear from you. So have you, Hannah Coogan, have you identified outcome measures for reductions in flood risk to properties secure FDGIA? Well, you'll be another name for you, blast from the past. We are going through that process at the moment. So Faye Bull is leading on that, who was Faye Tivy, you might remember from Nottingham City Council, is leading on that with Hannah Howe, our modeller at AECOM, with regards to can we flex the Environment Agency rules with regards to qualification for FDGIA. And I think the EA's attitude is that they recognise they'd like to make a contribution, obviously, but to meet their rules, we would obviously have to tick all their boxes. And because of the theoretical way that we are attacking this to do it at pace, that's difficult. So we are developing a crude assessment, but it will require some flexibility for the EA. So yes, we're definitely asking, but we're going to have to potentially have some bend. But again, I think this is a trial. If you're going to do it at pace in the theoretical way that we're doing it, does that open the EA up to allow us to trial this under Mansfield and then allow us to inject this kind of pace into other projects in the future, to potentially change the way that FDGIA is funded? But at the moment, I don't think we'd be successful, but we're definitely asking that question. And actually, the new EA CEO is visiting Mansfield on Thursday of this week with our chief exec, Liv Garfield. So I'm sure that will be on the agenda at some point over their meeting. Nice to hear from you. Another anonymous, other than attending training courses, Syria, etc., what else is being undertaken to ensure that designers and, more importantly, contractors have the right skills to deliver retrofit SuDs? Good question. So I think, look, this is the first time we've done this. It's the first time Galliford Try have done this, who were our pilot contractor, and we've had some learning already. We are trying to include some of the expertise around the industry. So we've already spoke about Brett's and Marshall's on the paving. Also EPG have been engaged by ourselves and Galliford's, and we're looking to do that with Kier as well, to try and get their expertise and industry knowledge in and ensure that what we're doing is being fed back in. We're also producing some basic kind of toolbox talks for the guys on site, but it is definitely a first time learning opportunity. And we've had, you know, even for our suppliers, I think we've had issues with regards to the binding material on the permeable paving. We've had a bad delivery of that. We've had a bad delivery on grow medium. So, you know, we're all learning, I think, is the answer from me. And we need to develop our skills together. But again, that's back to sharing. Angus, anything to add on that?
No, I think it's just, leaning on industry expertise and learning from other contractors that have been involved with SuDs and just pulling in all the knowledge and experience we can to learn.
And I think the more we do this, the more our contractors will get a feel for it. You know, we did approach, you know, contractors that have done this stuff before, but they're not on our framework. So it's kind of how do you get the right people who have done this stuff, and better really that we're creating a new workforce